So my first question is, that I really like that phrase, mindful leadership, in the title. And I also noticed that you're the CEO and founder of Mindful Psychotherapy Services in New York City.
Mhm.
And so I'm just interested to hear more about that focus of yours on being mindful and how that came to be so important to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I live in New York City. I live pretty much, I think, New York is the most unmindful city that I can think of. And so it gives me lots of opportunities to practice just living here and practicing here. So mindful meditation was the beginning of my journey as a young person to help me wake up to feelings and thoughts and the unconscious. It was the first experience of understanding that I had thoughts that are independent from the shoulds and musts that were dictated in my childhood. And I had to learn that it's okay to have my feelings, because that's, that's something that wasn't actually validated or supported in the culture that I grew up. I was born in South Korea and moved with my family to the US when I was 8 and grew up in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm a Southerner. And by nature, I've always been curious and expressive, but the first group, which is my family, were culturally Korean and had very rigid expectations for how I was to behave, which is to be compliant and sweet, accommodating, defer to others. The only feelings that were allowed to be expressed in my family was anger, and only men and boys were entitled to that. So, so I grew up, understandably, the way that I grew up, this made me a very anxious and insecure kid. Being the only Asian immigrant kid in every class was very difficult. I had a hard time feeling like I belonged. I got made fun of. Growing up in Raleigh, there's a lot of racism. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of feelings that I had that weren't positive, and I didn't know how to make sense of it. And my family did not help me understand how to talk about it. So I got very good at denying feelings and directing it inward. So my only source of learning about the world was the library and books, and that's how I learned about life and the world. And as you know, college, so when I got to college, and college is when you start beginning to feel free to explore, your identity independent from family. A lot of the whole can of worms started, sort of kind of opened up, and a lot of the buried feelings and thoughts that I had that I got good at, denying, sort of opened up, and, not surprising, I became symptomatic and started having panic attacks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. And then, I went back to what I used to cope, which is, the library and the books. And I found a book on mindful meditation.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, just completely clueless, having panic attacks, couldn't sleep. There's no way that I was going to pick up a book on psychotherapy, because that's not, that wasn't something that my family was open to, or, there was a lot of stigma around that. So meditation and mindfulness was really helpful for me, because, when I started meditating, I realized that I had these thoughts and feelings, and that I could be with these thoughts and feelings without judging them. Wow. And it really helped to begin to lay down the foundation for becoming more curious about my unconscious.
Right. No wonder it's such a foundational piece of your work. And Yes. Thank you for sharing that amazing, yeah, story of how it came to be. I love that.